they're like pulling the baby out and they're like, look at your baby. And I was like, ah.
Yeah, I just was beside myself because they called in the nurse from the NICU.
They called in the nurse practitioner from the NICU. And
we have 3 children, 6 and under, and each of them have a unique birth story. Mm-hmm. And let's unpack it and share everything with you guys.
Yeah, I guess we'll start with Eliana.
Yes, Eliana was born February 7th, 2018.
With Eliana, I was 41 weeks pregnant actually 41 weeks and a half when I finally ended up giving birth.
Seemed like forever.
Yes. But since it was my first pregnancy, I did not go into spontaneous labor. I never got to 1 centimeter dilated.
Right.
So they called us to go for an induction at 41 weeks.
Yes, we were eating pizza. I'll never forget. We were eating Anthony's coal-fired pizza, and it's well-done pizza. It's not really my thing, but we're not getting into it. I hate coal-fired pizza. I like my pizza, like, cooked medium, like, not crispy. But anyway, it was one of these, like, hey, come in at this certain time.
We had to call and make sure that they had a bed available for us. So it was at nighttime.
Yeah, so we ended up going in, like, at night.
Mm-hmm. I think it was, like, 7 p.m. at night. We called and they said that we were able to go in, that they had a bed for us.
Yes.
And so we went and had the dinner. My grandparents were there. It was really sweet. And
we had bags packed.
Yeah, we had all of our bags packed.
We had watched a mountain of birth vlogs, and I don't know about you guys, but every birth vlog that we watched, it was always like emotional birth story in capital letters, and I mean, maybe 1 or 2 was like super emotional, but like we had mentally prepared ourselves by watching all of these videos and all of these what to bring, like hospital bag videos, what to expect, you know, for certain situations. But there was a lot of things that happened during our first child's pregnancy once we got to the hospital that we were like, holy crap, this was in none of the birth vlogs.
Yeah. And I expected, obviously, to go into labor naturally or my water break, and none of that happened. So I did not want to go past 41 weeks. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I mean, this was 6 years ago, the practice that I was going to would not induce you until you were 41 weeks if it was a healthy pregnancy.
Right.
So, again, we called, we went in, we drove there, it was night, and they got us set up in the room. And I remember somebody was giving birth next door.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
It was a scream that you never forget. Like a scream you're like, oh my God, is this what having a baby is like?
Yeah, it was so scary. Me and Joe were looking at each other.
It was horrific. It was
and the
awful.
Nurse said that they came in too late, and basically it was that the birth was unmedicated, but the person wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
And so let's just say we were very disturbed from that
And the
point
first night was kind of hard for Sam. There was a lot going on. I remember you didn't sleep well the first night.
I didn't sleep well because they gave me this antimicrobial soap to wash my body with.
I forgot about this.
I'm actually allergic to it.
Right, come to find out.
So I ended up a couple days later with like all these like red welts and stuff, but it was so itchy, and I kept thinking it was the monitor for the baby, but really it's because I'm allergic to that soap. So it was the antimicrobial soap. And so when I came in, they're like, oh, are you feeling any contractions? And I was like, no. And they put me on the monitor. They're like, you're having contractions. And I was like, I am. I thought that was like the baby pushing down. Obviously, they weren't that bad if I didn't know that they were contractions. Mm-hmm. So they just had me on the monitor. And I think that night they put in the Cervidil, which is something they put up in there. And that's supposed to, like, soften your cervix because I was 0% dilated. Mm-hmm. So that had to, like, sit up there during the night. And we just, like, watched movies. And
yeah, that first night as an up-and-coming new dad, I didn't know what to expect. I was just like, hey, we're going to show up to the hospital. They're going to give her some medications and push the baby out. And like, that was kind of really what was in my brain. And so the night progressed. Nothing was really happening.
Yeah, and they check, I forget how many hours, but they like check you after a certain amount of hours.
Right.
So so another thing about me is I have something called a Gartner's duct cyst, which is like a cyst on the outside of, it's like an internal cyst before the cervix, and it's outside. So when they were trying to put the Cervidil in, they had to pass the cyst, and it was extremely, extremely painful.
Yes,
I mean,
remember.
I had an ectopic pregnancy that was basically ruptured, and I wasn't even crying in pain. And I was screaming when they were putting it in. So they were saying that they couldn't get it up high enough. So after the first Cervidil, they checked and nothing happened. I wasn't even 1 centimeter. I was nothing. So they tried to put another one in higher up. They tried to put the second Cervidil, and they were saying that it wasn't high enough. And I think that's then when they decided to do the balloon.
Yeah, they did quite a few things, and everything that they tried on her it was uncomfortable, very painful, and I start to get upset and I start to get emotional when I see Sam getting upset and when I see her getting emotional. So I'm like, all I know how to do is just cry. like she's like yelling in pain and I'm like over here crying. I'm like, I don't know what's going on because I don't want her to be in pain. I think my brain takes me to like worst case scenario, like, oh my God, like what is happening? Like what is going on?
Anytime I'm in pain, yeah, he doesn't.
Right.
And so he was reminding me, I guess I got a balloon.
Yes.
But
I don't know what that is.
But neither do I. But what they did was they ended up giving me an epidural so that they could put whatever they needed to up higher and it would pass the cyst and I wouldn't feel it. So I ended up getting an epidural, which did not really hurt. I think maybe because I was already having contractions, but it's not like I was in labor. I was not having it felt like Braxton Hicks kind of. But so they gave me the epidural and then they tried the balloon and they gave me Pitocin. But at this time I could feel nothing.
Yeah.
So it was I was numb. I couldn't feel any of the contractions, the balloon, anything like that. And so we just waited, however, I think it was 2 days.
We were at the hospital for days, it seemed. It seemed like we were at the hospital for weeks, y'all. I mean, and for some context, this was the hospital that Sam worked at, which was the main reason why we chose this hospital. So some of the people coming in, we knew some of her coworkers were coming up saying hi. And it was just a comfort level on like why, because I know some people like tour hospitals.
We did go on a hospital tour.
At which one? The one you worked
one,
at?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we toured the hospital.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that. But yeah, that was one of the main reasons why we chose this hospital. And it was a super nice hospital, very highly, awarded, and we felt very comfortable having the baby here.
Also, my OB wasn't there because the practice we were going to was all women, and there were 3 doctors, and 2 of them were out on maternity leave. So there was 1 doctor that was covering for the whole entire practice, so she wasn't available when I went in, which I was fine with because, like Joey said, I worked there, so I knew the hospitalist OB, and I liked them, so I was completely fine
They were all
with that.
super nice.
So we ended up having an OB that just worked at the hospital, was not like my specific OB. All the girls came up there like, let's get an ultrasound, let's see how big the baby is. And I was an ultrasound tech there, so of course, like the whole department comes up.
Yeah, everybody's there scanning Sam. The doctor was in there too.
My mom was in there.
Yeah, and we had really no idea. We knew Sam was at that time 40-something weeks. So
yeah, but we weren't I wasn't measuring the baby and getting the weight and stuff.
We weren't thinking the baby was going to be bigger or larger than the average baby weight. And they scanned her, and then what'd they say?
Yeah, they were scanning me, and her hand went across the screen, and we all went, oh my gosh!
It was like a gigantic hand.
And my mom was like freaking out. She's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? But really, it was just, we had never seen a hand that big on ultrasound before, and it was just crazy. And so they were measuring Eliana, and she was measuring 11.5 pounds.
Yeah. I will never forget the doctor.
Yeah, the doc. So, and also, if you don't know this about ultrasound, it can be plus or minus up to a pound. So it's guesstimating.
Right.
But for it to be that big, I mean...
Yeah, the doctor was like, listen, what are we doing? Trying all of these things, because I think we were still trying, there was still hope to have a natural birth. That's why we were trying these things. But then the doctor, after seeing that ultrasound, was like, listen, what are we doing trying all these things and these medications? Let's just get this baby out.
Yeah, she was like, you could be here. Oh, and the baby Eliana was not in distress. She was completely comfortable in there.
Yeah.
We would have immediately gone for a C-section if there's any distress. She was completely fine. The doctor was saying, because she's so big, if her shoulder gets stuck or something, we might have to break her clavicle to get her out. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is already 2 days, medications, not able to eat, and I'm not even at a 1. Mm-hmm. I'm not even at 1 centimeter. I was like, sign me up for the C-section.
And that was like later in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. So it was like, all right, let's get the OR prepped. And then it became mind and like, okay, you're having a C-section. Mm-hmm. So I was getting scrubbed, and like Sam was like taking off jewelry and socks and all of like the stuff to prepare for a C-section. And mind you, like we were like kind of like, I think a lot of first time parents, when they think like having a C-section, it's like, oh my God, like, you know, they think OR, they think all this thing. And like, yeah, for me, I was kind of nervous. I was like, this wasn't, you know, something we planned and expected doing.
And I just was ready to get the baby out, so right. I didn't really care. I was like, let's go. Yeah. You know, let's go. Yeah. You can say from your point of view, but from my point of view, I already had an epidural, remember, from previously trying to get all the cervidils and the balloons and everything. So they like wheeled me back into the OR, and they just like, they strap you to the bed and they get you all ready, but he's not with me at this time. They left me
behind. I was just talking about this. So like they took Sam, and then I'm just kind of like waiting around, and then they were like, oh, okay, like follow us. And they brought me, I can envision it now. They brought me into a dark hallway, probably 20 feet from the OR. This was at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't a lot of people working, and it was so quiet. And I was just like literally sitting there in my thoughts. And mind you, I didn't even have my phone with me. So this was in 2018. I had like a camcorder that we had just purchased. I was like, all right, yeah, we're going to do it like the old fashioned way. I'm going to have like this camcorder. So I'm like holding this camcorder.
Because again, we've been watching all these birth vlogs. Yes. So I was like, I want my birth to be on camera.
Yeah, we want it like professionally, you know.
It was like one of those cameras you like hold like this. Yeah. They eventually let him into the room.
Yeah, it was.
I don't even know when they let you in. Were they hadn't started the procedure yet? No, right?
Sam was laying down, and there was like probably 10 people in there. There was 2 people standing by that little, you know, tray thing where they set the baby and weigh and do all that stuff. And then there was like doctors and nurses.
And I'd like to point out it was shift change. So we had a new doctor that we didn't have the whole time we were there.
It was my first time meeting that doctor.
Yes, but she was everybody's favorite when I worked there. So I was completely comfortable with her. I was excited that she was the one that was going to be doing the C-section. Uh-huh. And we had amazing nurses up until then. But we did have a new nurse. And...
we could talk about it.
One specific nurse can really change your whole entire birth experience, just like I'm sure one ultrasound tech can change your appointment. Yeah. And we had amazing nurses up until this point. And I don't know if she was having a bad day. I don't know what people have going on in their life. But it wasn't like the nice, pleasant nurses we had before.
It's almost like it's almost like the situation where you like love the doctor, and the front desk is like not it was like it just makes it so hard. Like everything else was so good, but the lady taking care of Sam was just bad vibes all around.
So we're in the operating room, I'm strapped down, and they're doing that thing where they're like touching you, and they're like, can you feel this, can you feel this? And I was like, yes, I can feel that. Now I had an epidural, not a spinal. So because I had already had the epidural in place from previous. So they did not give me a spinal, which they normally give you for like a scheduled C-section. So I had an epidural. So they were like poking me, can you feel this? And I was like, yeah, I can feel that. And they're like, oh, pressure's normal. I'm like, okay, I'd never had a C-section before. I was like, sure. So they start doing the procedure. And of course I wanted Joey to look. I was like... They're like, do you want to see? And he's like, no, I'm going to pass out. I was like, look.
So I like poked my head above a couple times, like throughout all of the births. I'd like poke my head over the little curtain, and I'm like, oh my God, I did not just see. That's something that a regular person's eyes should not be looking at. Like, are you in pain?
All I can explain it as is right before, so it must have been when they got deeper, closer to the uterus, right before they pulled her out, I started feeling like a scratching feeling. And it just felt like someone was scratching me. And I was like, I feel like someone's scratching me. Is that normal? And then it started getting like worse and worse. And then it started to like burn. But it was only in a spot that was like this big. So it's not like I was feeling it on the whole thing. But the only way I can describe it is it felt like they were doing the surgery in a hole about this big.
Yes. So basically, Sam felt her C-section.
I felt it in this one spot. They're like pulling the baby out, and they're like, "Look at your baby," and I was like, "Ah!"
Yeah.
I can feel it. Like, I'm like screaming in pain at this point. So they pull the baby out and they bring him to this area, you know, the thing that they put the baby on. And at this hospital, they had like a glass.
Yeah.
Like a glass wall. And all of our family was on the other side of the wall. And they could kind of see into the operating room when they unfrosted the glass. So they unfrosted the glass so everybody could see the baby. And it was actually so sweet. My brother-in-law took a video of all the grandparents seeing the baby. They were all
like crying, sobbing, holding each other.
So it was so sweet that he thought to do that. Yeah, and we watch that video all the time.
And I had no idea like they were gonna have like this little glass area. Like I just thought it was just gonna be Sam and I. But it was cool. Like for families, they had this like little frosted glass area where you like a room where you could watch like the OR, like what's happening.
It was mainly like where they were putting the baby. Mm-hmm. And Joey was over with the baby.
Yeah, as soon as this baby came out, I was like, so like, oh my God, like I can't believe there's a baby here. Like, like what are we doing? And they brought the baby over, and like I was with the baby, and like there's the glass with all of the family, and I'm like hand signaling to them like
how much
the baby weighed, and like I kept looking back at Sam, and I could tell like Sam was like looking, but then sometimes it'd be like in distress, but then looking. And so like I wasn't, because like this is like new, like I'm like all of my love and attention has been for Sam for so many years that like I was still like, oh my God, is my wife okay? Like, yes, we have this baby, but I need to be over here, like, you know.
Yeah, and they were telling me like, oh, your baby, and I was like, I couldn't even think about that. All I could think about was the pain I was in. I was like, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. And I could feel the anesthesiologist putting more medicine. Like, it felt cool, like a cool sensation. So I knew she was putting more medicine in, but it just was not taking the pain away.
Right.
And she was like, do you want to be put to sleep? And I am so scared of being put to sleep. Yeah. I don't know why, but that is like my biggest fear with surgeries is being put to sleep. So I was like, how much longer? And she's like, not that much longer. And I said, I can deal with it. Yeah. Like, do not put me to sleep.
And I think at this time they took the baby.
Well, so then the baby's there and I'm screaming and they go, and my mom notices that something is wrong with me. And so she starts to like notice me, and then they're like, frost the glass, glass.
They wanted to frost the glass.
Because my mom started like freaking out.
There's so much commotion going on. The doctors, the anesthesiologist, and so like the baby.
I couldn't tell you where the baby was.
The baby was born at 9:50, and after a little while, they took the baby.
Did they?
To this day, I don't know where they took the baby. They just took the baby. And I stayed with Sam because there was a lot happening. Mind you, back to the birth vlogs that we watched, the hundreds of them, none of them were like, oh yeah, we felt the C-section and, you know, and we had a nurse that wasn't, you know, understanding and compliant. And it was just like, no, we didn't see any of that. So this was all like very scary. Sam's crying. I'm crying. They're like, Dad's crying. I'm like sobbing.
And by the way, the nurse is sitting next to me. I don't think she believed I was in pain. I don't think she cared if I was in pain. I don't know what her deal was, but she was not comforting, soothing, nothing.
Yeah, no, she just looked at Sam as like another patient and like not
it was not, I mean, it was not good.
So basically in my brain during this process was like, oh my God, like what?
So he thought I was gonna die.
I thought she was dying, and I was sitting right next to her head, and the anesthesiologist was to my right, and they kept putting in that white propofol medicine.
Well, before that, they asked you, should I put her to sleep?
Yeah.
The anesthesiologist looked at him and said,
oh yeah. So
should I put her to sleep?
Yeah, so the anesthesiologist was like, what would you like for me to do? And I'm just like, listen, you're the doctor. He's not medical
at all.
I'm like just a new dad. Like, you do what you feel is right. She's asking me, oh, do you want me to put her to sleep? I'm thinking, I just don't want her to die. I don't want her to be in pain. So basically, I kept seeing them put the white medicine in. I think it was propofol. and she would fall asleep.
As he said, I'd start snoring.
And then 20 seconds later, I'd
wake up.
And then they put it in. So this was like happened maybe 5 or 6 times. Like the medicine kept going in. She would fall asleep, wake up screaming. I don't know where the baby is. I think she's dying. There's blood. Nurses are, and then Sam's yelling out the doctor's name.
Oh yeah. So then, remember I worked there.
So the doctor's name was KJ.
Yes, and she was amazing.
She was lovely.
And we'll explain afterwards everything that happened. But basically, at the end, I was in so much pain. I was just like, KJ, put me out. I can't do it. I can't do it. Put me out.
KJ.
Put me out. I was like, KJ. And the nurse is like sitting next to my bedside saying some very rude things that I won't repeat.
Yeah, there was some things said that we're not going to say on camera.
Let's just say that she was not very pleasant.
I almost sued the hospital. Maybe this is like a story within the story though, but like there was some things said that I'm not going to repeat on camera, but like, you know, I almost like sued the hospital like for some of this stuff.
I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't the doctor or anything.
The doctors
and the
were
anesthesiologist was so nice.
The anesthesiologist was nice.
And actually, I think it was the LPN or the surgical tech, somebody else was in there that was very nice. And at the end, I was like, "Put me out," and she was like, "You're done. You're done. It's okay. You're done."
Yeah.
And they like slid me over. And then they wheeled me out into like the recovery area.
Yeah, and that's
where I was with the nurse
and they
alone.
Yeah, and then that's when they had to like push on her belly and like all of that, and she was still in so much pain. Mind you, at this time it's like midnight, 1 a.m. It's been like hours, y'all.
Yeah, and I remember the breastfeeding consultant coming in, and you were like, "Now's not the time."
Yeah,
and
they're bringing in a breastfeeding consultant. I'm like thinking she's like dying.
And I want to say this: I never thought that I was dying. I just knew I was in pain. But he didn't know.
The more pain that she was in, the more I thought she was dying.
And then afterwards, I think the nurse like knew that she kind of messed up because she was like, "Well, this was a learning experience for all of us." And I was like,
right.
And eventually the doctor came in and she was like, you know, "Oh, everything went great. Is there anything you want to talk about?" And I was just going to let it go because, again, I work there. And I was like...
And I'm pretty sure the anesthesiologist, I'm fast forwarding here, or the doctor like went into our room later on or the next day and like, you know, was
the anesthesiologist, she came in and she apologized profusely. Yeah. She was like, "I am so sorry. I thought about you all night." Like,
yeah, and that's saying a lot. Like, they deliver babies like all the time, and for the doctors and anesthesiologists to come in and apologize, and like new parents were like, "What the hell is going on here?"
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
But she came in, the doctor, and I was like, "You know what? No, this was said. This is what happened." And she was like. She basically explained that it was something called a hot spot that can happen when you have an epidural. So, like, one spot, the hot spot didn't get the epidural. So that's why it felt like the surgery was just in, like, this one little circle spot. And,
it was just
it's just something that happens. I mean, it's nothing that could have been prevented or it just happens sometimes. And I remember after Eliana was born, I was like, I'm never having another baby.
Yeah.
I was so mad about the way that we were treated, not by the doctors. And let me just say, when we went to Mother and Baby, those nurses were amazing. Oh,
they were lovely.
Thank God for the second breastfeeding consultant that we had. She's the reason I was able to breastfeed probably all my kids. Like, she changed my life. We had the top care, and it was amazing. And it's just that one person can really change your whole experience. And I remember, like, I didn't even want to talk about it. Like, people kept asking me, like, "Oh, how's your birth experience?" We just kind of wanted to move
on from it. Like,
and it would just make me so mad. I didn't want to talk about it. But then, you know, a couple weeks go by.
I just feel bad that, like, you know, as a woman and an upcoming new mother, you like have this vision and like music playing in the background, candles, and you're pushing, and the baby comes on your lap, and like there's this like and like it's like this beautiful moment, and you guys are loving each other, and there's a photographer in the room, and like, you know, and I feel like they stole that joy from you. But like everything happens for a reason. and I'm well aware of that, but like, I just feel like I still feel bad that like she wasn't able to experience that like natural like beauty,
Yeah.
but that's not your story.
And I'm over it now and it's fine, but I would get so mad when I'd have to talk about it, like, because everybody wants to know, oh, what was your birth story? And I'm like, oh,
Right.
it cut into me and I could feel it, and this nurse was like so rude to me.
Right.
But I've processed it, and one thing I do want to say is no one tells you how much a C-section hurts, like not during it, but afterwards.
Yeah.
I was just, obviously you think, okay, yeah, they're cutting into you, but I just didn't realize like how much it would hurt.
Yeah, and that was another thing that we didn't really look at on all these birth vlogs is that like, okay, say we're back in the room, newborn baby, Sam's over here recovering from major C-section stuff, and she's not able to get out of bed. Baby's crying. I mean, I'm like, holy crap, I had no idea that like I would be caring for Sam and helping out with the baby as well. Like that was an insane amount of stuff. And also they put us in a room with a shower. Remember how small the shower was?
And the shower like leaked all over the place.
Yeah, there was like water leaking from that's not important.
It's not part of the birth story.
Not part of the birth story. I like those little details though.
But yeah, we ended up on the mother baby and having a great experience. She did end up having jaundice.
Yeah. Oh my god.
And she had to be under the blue lights.
These little lights. We still have the little glasses that she would have to wear. And like I just like
Joe would be like crying all day while she was under the little lights.
Yeah, she would have to stay under these blue lights, and
we weren't allowed to hold her.
Weren't allowed to hold her, and like this is my new daughter, and like I just like wanted, I just thought everybody was in pain. Like I was like, oh, she's in pain, Sam's in pain. Like I just wanted everybody to feel comfortable. Like, I wanted Sam to be comfortable. I wanted the baby to be comfortable. I just wanted to have that moment where we're all just sitting there and everybody's good. But we just didn't have that, and it honestly took like several days. We were at the hospital for like 4 or 5 days. I'm not even lying.
Well, she also had some sugar issues, and they said that I might have had, they don't know, but they thought maybe I could have had late onset gestational diabetes, so I would have passed the sugar test, but they thought maybe that's why she was so big. There's no way we'll ever know. But, so she did have to, like, get her little foot pricked, and she had a couple of sugar issues, and then the jaundice, but all that pretty much went away by the time we went home. And because she was so big, she slept through the night.
Oh my god, that first child, she slept all night long. People were like, oh, how did she sleep? We're like, yeah,
the first night, we literally woke her up after like 8 hours.
And you know how people were like, oh, well, you're supposed to wake her up and feed her. I'm like, well, she just slept once. And then, she'd eat. And y'all, I was so like legit on this like form, this little paper. It was like writing down when baby ate, what side breast, how many minutes, poop, pee. Like I still have this little chart, and I've done this with all the kids. It's kind of like my thing as a dad.
He gets up and writes it.
So, but anyway, like that, I think
that was Eliana's birth story in all its glory.
All its glory. It was a lot that happened, but you know what? I wouldn't have changed it for the world. I mean, I probably would have, but yes, yes. But it happened.
You know what? It happened. There's nothing that we can do about it. We ended up with a beautiful, healthy baby, and in the end, that's all that matters.
Yes, that's what's important. She ended up being wonderful. So our second child, Ariana, was born March 12th, 2021 at a different hospital, a hospital that Sam was working. It was a different hospital than the first one. So Sam changed employers, started working at a different hospital, and that was the hospital that we chose to have Ariana in.
Yeah, I didn't work at that hospital, but it was the same.
Yeah, the same group.
The same company, but it was children and mother-baby hospital.
This hospital was like prepared for anything. I believe the first hospital, they weren't quite prepared for a lot of different things. They had like a
level 2 NICU at the first one, but this one is like where you go if anything is wrong. Correct. They will transfer you to this hospital. They had their ish together, and we're just going to dive right into it. We checked in. It was in the middle of COVID. Well, let me first say, I had gestational diabetes with Ariana. Yes. So I opted for a scheduled C-section, and because I had gestational diabetes...
Which, God bless any of the moms that has gestational diabetes with the checking, the pricking, like all of that. Like I remember you going through that. I don't wish that on anybody.
This isn't proven, but I think it's because I worked the night shift that like my sugars were off.
Yeah. Sam worked like 7 p.m. to like 10 a.m. or something.
I worked 7 to 7.
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and went to school during the week.
Weekend overnights.
Yeah. I had gestational diabetes, so they do a scheduled C-section at 39 weeks.
Right.
So when we went in, I think it was
just us two.
6 in the morning or something. It was really early in the morning.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to have like anybody come with us.
Because it was just, COVID.
Yeah, it was just us two. We went in. We were feeling very comfortable about this process. We knew that it was kind of like we knew more, like on like we knew she was going to have a C-section. We knew like where to go, like what was going to happen.
And I went there and they got me changed into my gown and everything. I told them I was allergic to that soap, so I didn't have to use that soap.
Right.
And my fear was that no one was going to believe me about what happened with the first C-section. It was at a different hospital, and I was so scared that they weren't going to believe me. And they had the anesthesiologist come in and talk to us, and I told him what happened, and he was, like, on it. Yeah. Joey thought he was the janitor.
So these people walk in, we're, like, in the area where, like, you know, the pre-op area. And this guy,
is a mother-baby hospital, so it's like 10 people in pre-op for a C-section.
This guy comes walking in he was wearing like brown scrubs, and I thought he was coming in to like get our drink order or like he was down working at the cafeteria. He just, you know, and that always says don't ever judge a book by its cover,
and he was like the head anesthesiologist of like the whole thing.
He was the man, and he was so nice. All the people that worked on that unit were
amazing. We had
second
amazing
to none.
Experience.
The nurses, the anesthesiologist, the doctor, which we ended up actually getting the doctor that Sam has been working with.
Yeah, it was my OB this time.
So this time we actually had the doctor that Sam has been seeing. There was no like shift change or like weird hours or anything like that.
Yeah, and I told them what had happened, and they're like, we know, we've heard this before. I think my doctor might have told them, but they were like, we will make sure you are numb. Like they were just like so reassuring, and I felt heard and believed, and it was just an amazing experience. And
they called her back.
Yeah, so they brought me back. I don't know where you were.
I this time was still in like the little pre-op room area that had like a little curtain, so I wasn't like sitting down in a dark hallway this time. It was in the middle of the day, so there was a lot of stuff still going on. It wasn't like
there was a lot
in the middle of the night, and so I was feeling a lot more comfortable in that regard. So Sam was back in the pre-op or back in the OR for I don't know a half hour or so,
and
give or take.
And the anesthesiologist, I think it was a nurse esthetician. I don't know. Whoever was in there with me, amazing. She had me laughing the whole time.
Yeah, music playing.
They were like, "What music do you want?" I said, "Florida Georgia Line Radio."
I eventually walked in. Sam's laughing. The anesthesia, they're all carrying on. It was such a different vibe.
They were like poking me. They're like, "Do you feel this?" And I was like, "I feel a little bit of pressure." They're like, "Nope, we're not starting yet. We're giving you more medicine." I had a spinal this time, so you're like pretty much paralyzed now. And they were just like, "We're not going to start until we're completely sure." Right. Like it was just so comforting. They had music playing. It was like happy and joyous, and our doctor was very like high energy and like eccentric, so like he came in. It was just such a great experience.
And there was something interesting about this time is that Sam had a special request on seeing the placenta or something, so like they actually ended up saving some of the placenta for you to look at.
He took a picture for me on his phone.
And again, the mistake that I made too is I peeked my head over the curtain and took a picture. I still have it in my phone, and it was like, I'm not going to explain it, but I was like, oh my God, I still like have to like look at that picture and be like, I can't believe that is there. But
and something cool that they did is so once they pulled the baby out, they dropped the curtain and it was like clear.
Yeah.
So I could see the baby right away.
They didn't do that. They didn't do that with the first one. The first one, they just took the baby and then brought it to the table. This time they took the baby out, put it next to the curtain, and there we are. We were able to like hold Ariana's little
and it was like clear. It was clear, so I could see everything.
I'll never forget. He was like, "That's one pink baby." Yeah, it was like so funny.
He was really like high energy.
Yeah, he was my kind of doctor.
Yeah,
like
he had a really
good vibes, and they brought Ariana onto that same little table where they were measuring and all this stuff. And I was looking back at Sam, constantly asking her, "Are you okay?"
And I was completely fine.
And like that was like wonderful for me. As a dad, as a husband, that like she was good, so a lot of my focus and attention was on the baby. And here I go again, crying again, because they were
like, her oxygen was kind of dropping a little bit, and so they were like suctioning her.
Yeah,
because she was a C-section baby.
Right. So it was a C-section baby, and so they were like, oh, doing all these things.
I'm like, having a hard time breathing. Yeah. He's like,
why do they have to say that?
Like, I'm like, it's fine. It's just they gotta suction her. It's
I'm
okay.
like sobbing again, and here they go, Dad's crying. I'm like sobbing in the OR yet again.
They got her. It was fine. Yeah. It was only like a couple seconds.
So she ended up being perfect.
And they brought you and the baby to the pre-op area.
Yes.
And while they were like sewing me up and stuff, I think the surgical tech was still in there. It wasn't the doctor anymore, like doing the bandages. And he was like, oh, I like your tattoo. I have a thigh tattoo. And I was like, oh, I thought I was wearing pants. Because it was like such a weird feeling. It wasn't like the epidural. I was like paralyzed. I could not feel anything because it was a spinal. So, needless to say, I went back, started breastfeeding right away. We had amazing
Ariana
nurses.
was 7.5 pounds.
So she was like so small compared to Ellie.
So Ellie was like, and then Ari was like normal, 7-pound baby. So it was like so different in that regard.
But it was the best experience. It was amazing.
It was great. I would recommend
doctors.
Anybody to have a baby at that hospital.
And I think we only stayed for like 2 days. And on the mother baby unit, they were so like chill, and I think they were kind of like, oh, it's their second baby. Right. So they like barely even came in. Yeah. Just let us do our own thing.
Yeah, we didn't have any issues. We were there maybe a day or two, and then we went home. It was like not this whole thing where we're getting apologies from doctors or anesthesiologists. The food was good. The vibes were good. Yeah. And
it was COVID, so no one could visit us. Yeah. So it was us just chilling.
So that, it was like kind of sad that like, family couldn't be there.
Eliana couldn't come see
Eliana couldn't be there, and she was like, how old was she? Like 3 or so. And, so she kind of wanted to be there, but she understood like once we got home with the baby.
That's why we wanted to get out so fast. We're like, we need to get to her soccer game.
Right. We need to get to Eliana's first soccer game because we wanted to go.
And we made it.
With
the 2-day-old baby.
Yeah, right. We were like...
I think I might have like ripped a stitch, but it was the best experience. It was an amazing birth.
It was a great birth.
It was great. Yeah. And we thank all the nurses and all the doctors who took care of us.
Yeah, so Ariana ended up being fine. She was good, and that's the story of our second baby.
And that brings us to baby Joey.
Yeah, so baby Joey was born November 10th, 2023 at a different hospital. So Sam has had 3 babies, 3 C-sections at 3 different hospitals, 3 different doctors.
And this is the hospital that I currently work at.
Correct. So this hospital is a lot different. This one's like a community hospital. They're known for their trauma.
Trauma, strokes.
Yeah, great hospital.
They do have a NICU there.
I was born there, so like that was, as weird as it sounded, I was like, yeah, I was born there. I made it just fine, Yeah. So Sam did not have gestational diabetes.
No, thank God, I not.
We were all praying for the tests to come back negative. That was like our number one focus, was the gestational diabetes.
My birth plan for this baby was, my doctor was cool with me having a VBAC. So my birth plan was, if I went into spontaneous labor before 40 weeks, I would try for a VBAC.
Yeah, and if you don't know what a VBAC is, it is
a vaginal birth after cesarean.
Yes, and
it's actually technically a TOLAC because it's trial of labor, but you want to end in a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth.
And I completely understood that. There's these people that it's like, oh, it's risky, and like, we did have questions for the doctor, like, how risky is it? And I think it was like less than a 1% chance of any type of issues. Yeah, and our doctor
that we had this time, he is so smart. Yeah. Like, his bedside manner, he's very nice, but he's not like charismatic, like our other doctor, but he is so smart, and that's what I want in a doctor.
It was like the Rain Man OBGYN guy. He like knew everything about anything. You could tell he like wasn't this like old timer doctor.
He's younger.
Younger, that kind of has been in the field for a few years, and he's like up to speed with all of the new, information, and he was very helpful in that regard.
Very in-depth. He'll sit with you for 30 minutes and talk to you about the risk of a VBAC. Because you got to think there's also a risk for a C-section. Right. So we kind of just went through all that. And they don't really like to induce you. They can, but they don't like to if you're going for that. So the way that, and I could not make up my mind. So I just said, if I go into labor, great.
It happens, it happens.
And if it doesn't, we'll be there at 40 weeks for the C-section. And that's what we did. We were there at 40 weeks.
We were there at 40 weeks. What time was it when we showed up? It was during the day. And
oh, yeah, because I think we had, like, because I had waited a little bit to make the decision, I think it was, like, noon was our time.
Yeah, so we got there at noon. The nurse was lovely. Mm-hmm. We got back into our room, and they did all the things. The monitor,
pre-op.
Nothing crazy, nothing out of the normal, and they brought you back.
Yeah, but, so this hospital is where I work. So half of the hospital was built in 1928, and the other hospital is like new.
Yeah, so
we call it the old side and the new side at work.
So where she was having the baby at the old side, so the walls look like something from a movie. Like
maybe... it had like tile, like like the small square
like
tiles,
the tile
and like
walls.
Very ornate, not like how you would build a hospital
weird
now.
Statues.
Yeah, and so they're like wheeling me in. I swear to you, it looked like something from a horror film.
Yeah.
Like with all the tile
like,
and like all the
sinks. Like where are they taking her?
I was like, this is where I'm gonna die. I was like, this is some. It was so creepy back there when they wheeled me in. But they got like the wall. I think the walls were pink. It had pink tile in it where I delivered the baby. Like
it was weird.
So creepy.
All the cabinets were pink.
Yeah, it was
all the cabinets, where all the medical equipment was all pink.
Yeah, it was very disturbing. But so they wheeled me back in there. Where were you?
In a dark, lonely hallway, in one chair. Like there's literally one chair in this long hallway, and nobody was around. This was like very deep in the hospital where like there wasn't really offices.
We were the only people in there.
We were the only people. Sam was back in the OR.
It was the OR that's attached to labor and delivery. So that's where they do like emergency C-sections and stuff. So it's not like a big, busy like hospital kind of feeling.
And I was eventually called back.
But before he was called back, they gave me the spinal. They knew my history and everything. The nurse was so sweet. She was like holding me and rubbing my shoulder while I was getting the spinal. This spinal hurt worse than any of the ones I'd gotten before, like the lidocaine. But she was amazing and so sweet. And when we were in there, I was like, oh, who's in charge of the radio? And they're like, you are. And I was like, oh, let's play Morgan Wallen radio. So the vibes were good. The nurse was amazing.
The song was on that little Joey was conceived to.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, we're very transparent about that. Like this Morgan Wallen song was on when little Joey was created in Sam's womb. And he was also
on when he was being born. Yeah. It was just ironic that one came on the radio.
Right.
And I felt like it took forever to get to the baby. Was it just me?
So I walk in, Sam is feeling good, music's playing, the doctors, the anesthesiologists are there, and I start sitting next to Sam, and we're just kind of just chilling.
I did feel like my chest burning. I think it was before he got in there. And I did get nauseous. They gave me nausea medicine, and that went away. But I was like I felt like I couldn't breathe a little bit because the spinal like paralyzes you. And she's like, that's normal. Like the anesthesiologist was very sweet. And that eventually went away. And I just felt like a lot of pressure. I don't really remember like the C-section with the first one. I was in so much pain. And then with Ari, I don't really remember feeling like a lot of pressure or anything. But I did feel pressure, but it didn't hurt or anything like that. Yeah, and then they pulled baby Joey out. And I looked over the curtain again, and there everything was. And this time I was like, do you feel anything? Because he's like stretching skin and like all of this stuff. And I'm like, there's like no way you don't feel that. I was feeling a lot of pressure, but I wasn't feeling it. I was like, pain. Oh my God, this is like unbelievable. So they brought little Joey to... Oh, and before he got back there, I heard like a razor going off. And I was like, did I miss a spot? And she's like, a little bit on the left. I was like, so embarrassing. I forgot about that they do that. Yeah, so anyway, they brought him out. Yeah. And they like put him on the little thing. And this was our first son. This was a little bit more exciting. I mean, all of them were exciting. Don't get me wrong. But like this time we were having our first son. And there he was. They like brought him. There was no clear curtain or anything like the second one. So they brought him to the little table. They start measuring, doing all the things. And it kind of got a little bit serious
for a few minutes.
They were trying to like warm him up because he was a little bit blue.
Yeah, and
I don't think he cried at first.
No, he wasn't really crying. He had ingested a lot of fluids into his lungs, so they were trying to get him oxygen. I'm sobbing because they're talking about the breathing again.
And I was like, oh, it'll be fine. It'll just be like the last one where they'll just suck him out. And
I just was beside myself because they called in the nurse from the NICU.
They called in the nurse practitioner from the NICU, and she came in and was looking at him, and then all of a sudden our doctor just turns around. So we'll make another video on this, but basically our children have a heart condition, and they have like a certain gene that has a mutation, and it's a lot of like scientific stuff. And he literally turned around and spat out our entire medical history, the gene names, everything, and was like, in case that helps, and then turned back around to do the C-section.
I was so impressed.
I was very, very, very impressed.
You know how these OBGYNs, they have 100 million patients.
Hundreds of patients, yeah.
And for him to know this very fine, detailed medical history of our previous children, of everything going on.
Yeah,
like,
he wasn't
right
even the doctor of our previous children.
No,
he knew their ages, their conditions, what they've had, their surgeries. Like, he knew it all.
Yeah.
I was, like, really impressed by that.
Yeah, so basically they made the decision to take little Joey to the NICU, and He
had to have a CPAP. Is that what they called it?
I think it was like a
mask. A high-flow oxygen mask. That was the only way for him to keep his oxygen up.
Yeah, so they brought him to the NICU, and I went with him and left Sam in the OR. And I was like, go with him. Go. I wanted him to go with the baby. I was feeling good about her situation because she was comfortable. She wasn't in any pain.
Yeah, I was fine.
So I went with the baby, and I'm like beside myself, like hysterically crying in the NICU because they have him on this little tray next to a bunch of other babies that may have looked like they've been there for a long time, and it's all the wires and stuff. Like, I have a hard time visioning children that have wires attached to them and stuff. Like, it really, really is upsetting to me, and makes me emotional. And they put him on this table. They got the things in his ears or in his nose, and all the stuff on his chest monitoring him, and they're trying to get him to breathe better. I can't remember. I don't remember. All I remember is that I was hysterically crying and consoling with the respiratory therapist, like a lady, I can't remember who, but it was a lady that like was just meant to just walk me down there.
Yeah, he's back there crying. I'm getting sewed up. I feel completely fine. In my head, I'm like, don't panic. It'll be okay. Don't panic. Again, we are at a hospital that has a high-level NICU, so I felt good about that.
NICU nurses were wonderful.
I go and do ultrasounds in that NICU all the time, so I know that they're good nurses. They take me out of the operating room into like the little recovery room where I think they do like your vitals a couple times.
Yeah.
And they had brought the baby like near my head before they take him to the NICU. And I just wanted to hold him so bad, and I could not hold him because he was in the NICU. And then that's when you came.
Me and the respiratory therapist went from the NICU back to Sam where she was at, and like, you know, we got there, and Sam was like very, you know, starting to get upset because she wanted to hold the baby and see the baby, and you know, Sam's crying to her, and like
this
lady, like, her job wasn't to like, but she did. This is like, you know, what like healthcare workers are all about. Like, the ones that are like all in, like, will sit there with the patient, even if it's not their responsibility or it's their job. Like, this lady was a godsend. She was like there for us. She was very comforting, and you know, we just found somebody at the hospital to console with. And
yeah, she was just supposed to be walking Joey from the NICU to my recovery
We were like,
area.
we needed to find some sort of healthcare worker to cry upon.
Come to find out afterwards, she was talking to the nurses, and she was like, I didn't know what to do when Mom started crying. But yes, we love you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Everybody was so sweet, and the NICU nurses were great, and they were just like, you know, you can't hold him yet, you know, and I couldn't feed him.
Yeah.
And they brought me back to our room, and they were like, anytime that you want to see the baby, we will get you transported to the NICU.
Yeah, we can go to the NICU anytime we wanted to, but it was still like different. We were in our hospital bed with no baby.
But I was pumping. They were like, you can pump the colostrum. So I'd pump, and then we'd like press the button, and they would take us up, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
That you were able, I think it was in the middle of the first night, it was like 2:00 in the morning, and it's like, I need to go there.
Yeah.
You know, and I just pressed the button and they transported me right up there, no problem. 2:00 in the morning, I'd bring the colostrum. And actually the night NICU nurse, I was like, can I hold him? And she's like, yeah, I don't see why not. And I was like, oh my God.
She held him.
So I had to hold him.
Yeah, she was trying to breastfeed him and stuff.
That was like the next day and stuff.
Yeah, and it was like very different because we had no baby in the room.
Yeah.
We had family members wanting to come see the baby, but we were like, listen, he's in the NICU.
It's just us in the room. Like, when we weren't in the NICU.
Yeah, it was a different experience having, you know, the baby in the NICU than the previous one. So that's what makes this one different as well.
Yeah. But again, we had amazing nurses, amazing doctors.
And he ended up being okay. Like, he was there for, what, a day or two?
Yeah, they were able to, like, wean him off the CPAP, and then he was able to eat. And then they are supposed to stay there for, like, 24 hours. But then after that, the NICU doctor was like, he's really doesn't need to be here. He was just had some fluid in his lungs from the C-section, so he let him come to the room with us. And then he had to just pass a car seat test where they took him in the middle of the night to make sure he could keep his breathing. Yeah, that was a weird one.
They literally brought him to a room and kept him in a car seat in the middle of the night. I think we were both sleeping during this.
And they had to, like, keep his oxygen up for a certain amount of hours. But amazing. We loved our postpartum nurses. We loved our labor nurses. Yes. Everybody was so great. Another great experience. Again, scary because of the NICU situation.
Oh yeah, one of our nurses actually followed us online and was like, "Oh, I didn't want to say anything. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was so cool. She was like a big fan of ours and like actually ended up being assigned our nurse."
Yeah, so it was a really great experience. We loved our doctors, loved our nurses. We were taken care of beautifully, and yeah, that's baby Joey's birth story. That's little
Joey's birth story. Yeah, it all went good.
So no matter how you end up having your baby, whether it's naturally, whether it's with an epidural, whether it's a C-section, at the end of the day, the important thing is that you have a healthy baby, right? So don't get down on yourself, but also like stick to your plan. If there's something that you want, then stick to that plan. I said I wanted a VBAC at 40 weeks if I went into natural labor, but then also be able to pivot. Okay, I didn't go into natural labor. I don't want to do the risk of induction, so I'm okay with the C-section. Like, so just be able to pivot and be flexible, but also stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself. Yes. Because you are your biggest advocate, and if something doesn't feel right or isn't right, make sure that you speak up, because at the end of the day, you know your body better than anybody else.
100%. Yeah. And also too is that, like, you know, if you're worried, you're scared, just know that like we're all naturally worried and scared to go into a hospital and to have a baby. I mean, maybe not some of you, but like, yeah, I mean, of course you're going to be nervous to go in and to have a baby, but like, just know that like, you know, if we could do it 3 times, and if she could do it 3 times, and if I could somehow, I'll keep crying. If we have another baby, who knows, I'll probably cry again, and like, you know, oh, dad's crying, but like, you know, it all ended up being fine.
And honestly, you'll forget the pain eventually. Like, once you have the baby in your arms, they say that you forget.
Yeah.
But yeah, however you end up having your baby, or however you did, we send you love, we send you light, and we hope if you're watching this and you're getting ready to have a baby, we hope everything goes great.
Yes, we are manifesting good news at the hospital or wherever you're having the baby. And if anybody has any other questions that we may not have like discussed during this video, put it in the comments or message us privately if you don't want to, like, you know, ask a question, you know, and put it in the comment section if you want it more private, if that makes sense.
I think that sums it up.
I think that does sum it up. 3 babies, 3 C-sections, 3 different hospitals, 3 different scenarios on
3
all
different
of them.
stories.
3 different stories.
3 different doctors.
I hope you watched all of this. If you did, you are a real one. Thank you so much. And any final words?
No. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.